Hello, my name is Seamus McKernan. I am a Nioxin Design Team Member for North America, and today I'm really excited to showcase for you some color techniques that we can use for our clients who have a little bit finer hair. So you guys will see on the left-hand side of the mannequin, we've already completed the color application. And this is a technique that I like to call blended lights. So it's designed to create some pops of color that have a really, really soft blend off so that you don't necessarily need to add a shadow root or add in anything else to create a nice blend. For the color mannequin, I've chosen to go with something that is a little bit more of a fashion color. So we decided to go with a really nice deep rosewood color, followed by some rose gold accents, which you guys should be able to see here. I'm just going to move her up a little bit. And you guys can see also with her haircut, we've given her what I'm calling an insta shag, because I think we're all pretty familiar right now. If you guys have not heard of the shag yet, it's going to be the haircut that you're going to hear a lot about in the next couple upcoming months. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to show you a technique that works incredibly well, that requires very few foils, but gives you a really amazing result. And one of the reasons why I wanted to showcase this technique is because right now we're seeing a lot of people doing bigger highlighting patterns and coming up with different ways to try to create a bigger effect with a little bit less work. So the idea behind this is that we're going to be using a couple of different Nioxin color principles. We're going to be using the principle of gradation by creating a little bit of a deeper root. And we'll be using the principle of adaptation because we'll be using foils, but we'll be using them in a non-conventional way. For our foil sectioning, we're going to be paying very close attention to the areas of thinning and concern. So when we part her hair out, we're going to be parting above the parietal ridge using 2 triangle sections. What this is going to do is this is going to allow us to have control in the areas where she may feel like her hair is a little bit finer. Where her hair is a little bit denser below, you'll notice that we've used a thicker section to accommodate that. And when we start the sectioning, we'll be going ahead and starting in the back. So we'll be starting in the back in the bottom. Whoops. We'll be starting in the back and in the bottom to create a classic foil section. It's also going to make it easier so we don't have to disturb the foils as we work our way up by flipping them in the opposite direction. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the section down. I'm going to tilt her head just a little bit so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see and just make things a little bit simpler. And when we're doing our first couple foils, we're going to be using more of a classic technique. So as we're going to go ahead and we're going to just take a small section from the bottom. And the reason why we want to do this is so when she flips her hair up, she has a little bit of brightness. This is going to help to kind of create a little bit more movement. The other thing to keep in mind is everything is nice and dense down here. It's really up in this area that we're concerned. So we can go ahead and highlight a little bit more strongly down here without being worried that we're going to make her hair look finer. And we can also give her something that feels a little bit more classic. So I'm going to start with a classic baby light technique, which is just really a simple microfine weave. So when I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure that my weave is tiny enough that it's not going to create anything too stripy or unblended. So as I'm going to go ahead and take that foil and I'm just going to gently close it. The biggest thing about this is when we're working with foils, we want to be mindful to not be too aggressive, because if you are, you can actually jostle the foils out of the hair, or you can take them away from the hairline. And if we look, there's very good mobility, but the hair is directly at the root. So right above the section, we're going to go ahead and take another small section. We're going to slice off a little piece, and then we're going to go ahead and repeat the same procedure. So this is going to create a nice bang of blonde at the bottom that's super blended, but creates a really nice impact. One of the things that I love is all of these things are available at the Wella Pros store. That's where I've gotten 90% of my supplies. And it is wonderful because I am a big fan of online shopping, so it makes it super easy. So as we're moving up, we're going to go ahead and skip a space about the width of your pinky. So when you're working, you want to keep in mind as you're doing this to do this a little bit more naturally. The reason why we want to skip that space is because without having a little bit of depth there, what will end up happening is it will end up looking a little bit washed out. So this is going to be a really important section because this is where our technique is going to change from a classic foil. So again, I'm going to go ahead and take that little pinky size section. And here is where we're going to use a different Nioxin principle of color, which is adaptation. So adaptation is when we take something and we make it fit our needs. So in this section, I want to see a little bit more brightness on the outside edge, but I want it to taper off really nice and gently as it moves towards the interior because we're starting to get in that danger zone where the client feels a little bit of thinning. So I don't want to do two big slices because if I do two big slices, what's going to end up happening is I may highlight this area too much. So the technique that I've created is a blending lights technique. So what I'm going to do very simply is I'm going to start by making a slice like so. Then I'm going to stop, I'm going to pick up, and then I'm going to go and move into a much softer baby lights technique. So what you'll see when I lift is on the inside edge, we'll have a much more blended section, and on the outside edge, we'll have a brighter pop of color. This is going to allow me to create more light where I want to see it and less light where I don't. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a much larger foil, which is an uncut foil. I'm going to go ahead and slide this bad boy in half and be very gentle when I place this. I want to place directly in the dead center of the foil and bring it down like so. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and move in. And the tool that I'm using, just so you guys know, as my lightener is going to be our new Wella Blondor Plex. And this is amazing because this actually contains Wellaplex in it. And I love this particular lightener simply because it is absolutely fantastic. I have found no difference between using this and our regular Blondor in terms of the strength. And right now, it's actually at a really good price. So I'm really super excited. I actually discovered it from mywellastore.com because I was looking for stuff for my business. And when I saw it, I thought, well, what the heck, we'll give it a shot and see because I'm always interested in new stuff. And it's been amazing. It's changed the game for me. So when you guys are working, the nice thing about this technique is you can place your highlights however you want. So if I feel like in the interior, I could use an extra slice, I'm able to do that. But I'm also able, if need be, to just do a slice and a weave. Now, keep in mind when you're working with a larger foil and you're going around the round of the head, you want to be very careful as you're placing the foil and bringing it down to gently use your fingers on either side to press that foil down so it does not affect. And it's really important when you're doing this to also make sure that you're using a clean section. I personally, when I'm doing these kind of techniques, always use diagonal sections because I find they help to blend the color better. I always think of the show What Not to Wear because they always used to say vertical stripes make people's legs look longer, horizontal makes them look fatter. So what's halfway between a horizontal and a vertical? A diagonal. So diagonal lines create a blend. So when we do our foiling, if we do it on a diagonal, chances are we're going to end up with a much more blended result. So as I'm working, you guys will see, again, I'm going to be super gentle as I'm closing this foil. Most important thing when we do this is just not to try to over bunch the foil, find where it naturally wants to close, and then close it gently. Once it's locked into place, I can take my thumb just to hold it and smooth the foil down so it stays out of my way. Another thing to also remember with this, as we're moving towards the top of the head, when we do her shadow, if we choose to do a root shadow, we want to do it a little bit deeper because we want to make sure that we're creating some depth at that root to help create the illusion of thickness. If she has finer hair and we leave those highlights with no shadow, what could happen is it could really highlight the fact that her hair might be a little thin in that area. So as I'm working, if I decide to shadow someone, I will make that shadow mirror the shape of the sections. So I'll do a little triangle on top. I'll shadow a little deeper down here. And then as I'm moving up, my shadow will get progressively more shallow. And if you guys don't know what I mean when I say a root shadow, what I simply mean is I will do a color from Color Touch that is 2 levels lighter than her natural, but a little bit darker than the color that I do on the ends. Now, as we're moving into the crown, we're gonna go ahead and slide back into our normal foils. And the reason being because we're not in that wide area. So when you guys are working and you're wondering, well, why would you use one versus the other? Think about the width of the area. I highly recommend having both types of foils readily available in case you do wanna create a larger effect. So as I'm going through, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna slice, stop, and then weave that inside interior. I wanna make sure that I'm thinking about where I want my biggest bang of light or my biggest amount of payoff to happen. And I want that to happen on those outside edges where the hair is a little thicker. Where the hair is a little finer, I'm gonna go ahead and slide into my normal classic weaving technique. So right now I'm working on my last section in the back, and I'm only gonna take a very, very, very fine section. I wanna leave a little bit of coverage in the top, and here's where you wanna be very mindful. We don't wanna use our technique, even though we love it. We wanna go back to more of a classic baby light because this is where her hair is starting to feel a little more fine. So if we were to create a slice there, we might create too much light and we'll end up creating a bit of a problem, and we'll have to root shadow a little more aggressively than we'd like to. So I'm just gonna do a really micro fine baby light. And one of the things I'm gonna do is just use my brush, and I'm gonna very gently brush up to create a little bit of blend. And then from the middle, I'll brush down. And then as soon as I get done with this, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to our first front section. So the big thing about this is we want to leave a little veil of darkness over top. So it helps to create a little bit of coverage. I know it seems a little scary, but you guys won't even miss that veil because when we do the haircut, we'll expose a little bit of this lightness underneath. So now we're moving on into our front section. And to me, this is really important because this is where we have our money pieces or the pieces that everybody loves, those beautiful little blonde pieces along the hairline. So when I'm starting, I want to be very mindful to follow the shape of the actual hairline itself. So when I'm looking, I'm going to see that the hairline has a little jut out here, but I'm not going to get too concerned with that because one of the things that I can do is I can always take this section and I can slice it first and then go back through and weave. So I'm gonna find my little connector point between the top and bottom of the section like so, move this hair out of the way. And then as I'm working, I'm gonna apologize to you guys, I might turn my back to you for 1 second. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start with my microwave. And I'm just gonna really gently make sure that I go all the way from the top of the section to the bottom of the section. And that way I create a really nice blend. When you're doing this, it's important to lift the hair out of the way so you can check to make sure that there's no big pockets. Meaning if you accidentally weave and you take just a little too much, you might end up with a chunkier section than you want. And if you have that happen, now's your last opportunity to really change that up and get everything moving. So I'm gonna go ahead and place my foil very gently. If I feel like there's puckering in the corner, sometimes just changing your hand position can really help with that. So you guys can see the difference of what happened a second ago and what happened now. I'm gonna just really gently, lightly put this in. So as we're moving towards the top of the head, we wanna be mindful. Down here, we have a little safety section because this hair is gonna be hidden by the hair above it. So if our weave isn't perfect, we'll still be okay. But we want to remember when we move into our last section that this is the top of the head, so there's nowhere to hide. So we're going to connect our section here at the hairline by creating a very soft micro weave. And, as I'm working on this, I wanted to tell you guys, 90% of the supplies that I got for this project came from mywellastore.com. I knew that I was going to be doing this and I needed to order some extra stuff. So I was able to get it and it was super fast and convenient. And the nice thing about it was I ordered first thing in the morning and it came 2 days later and it was right at my house. There was no issues. It was super, super, super simple. So I will tell you guys, if you're smart about it at the beginning of your work week and you order at the right time, everything will usually be there by like 2 days later, which is really fantastic. And the cool thing is, since you're ordering directly from the manufacturer, there's less of a likelihood of something being out of stock. The thing that's really nice too is they send you a couple reminders, and they also send you an invoice, which for people like me who do their own taxes is really awesome. My accountant loves it because it makes it easier for us to keep track of my books. And I love it because it lets me know how much money I'm spending. And my husband loves it because he likes to know how much money I'm spending too. So we're going to go on now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use our little pinky again. We're going to go ahead and connect. So you guys can kind of see the thing that I always like with a good foil is when you're doing a really awesome foiling technique, it should almost be like Legos where the pieces interlock, or like a game of Tetris. So if my foils don't make sense or they don't square up with the section before them, then we're going to run into a little bit of a problem with that. So one of the things that I want to make sure of is as this foil is going, it's going to hit this corner. So where this foil and this foil meet, it's going to create a pop of light. So the nice thing about that is it's going to allow us to create a little bit more movement. And we just want to make sure as we're working too at the top that our section is really nice and clean. So you guys can kind of see me being picky. But remember what I said, this is the area where there's no place to hide. So I'm going to go ahead and start here by doing my little micro weave because I want that softness in the top and I want that bang of light underneath. Now, if she was someone who wanted a lot of impact in the top, you could absolutely reverse this and you could slice in the top and then weave underneath. What I find though is that these little micro weaves really do quite a bit. So sometimes I like that light underneath because it creates a little bit more drama and creates a little bit more depth up here. So as I'm working, one of the things that I find that's really important is to not use a really high developer because this hair could already be compromised. If it's finer hair, it is already a little bit more prone to breakage. So I'm only using 4%. And the reason why I've chosen to do that is because I should be able to get a sufficient amount of lift. And I love that because it is one of the things that really sets Wella and sets our lighteners apart is that you don't need to use a really high developer to get a really amazing result. The trickiest part of this technique for anybody who's going to try it is really learning in the beginning how to skip that space before you swap techniques. Once you understand that, it becomes really super easy and it moves super fast. Honestly, it took me maybe about 2 times of practicing this to figure this out. And once I figured it out, it was easy peasy. It really came out of a necessity. I was working in the salon and I was double booked. And I had a client who wanted to look like she had a lot of highlights in a really short amount of time and wanted everything super blended. So I had to be really thoughtful with the placement because I really only had about 45 minutes to do a full. And I normally like to take a little bit over an hour. So we had to do quite a bit. So this is a really great technique for those of you who have a client who maybe has never had color before. This is a really nice jumping off point for them because you're going to create a really nice foundation for their next color service and so on and so forth. So if they want to be mega blonde, this is a really nice stop on that journey because you're going to be able to create a little bit more of that impact right away. Now, if you guys will notice, I'm going to go ahead and do one more foil, and this is going to be my last foil for the section. I want to leave a veil out because this is the area where the client feels the most concern with her thinning. So if I was to go in and I was to foil all the way through, I'm going to make that hair actually feel a little bit thinner and finer. When we talk about adaptation, we want to make sure people are aware that if it doesn't make sense to do something there, don't do it there just out of a sense of obligation. Do it there because it's what makes sense for the technique. So as I'm working, if I feel like the client has an area of concern where the hair is finer, I'm not going to slice that area. I'm only going to weave it simply because it's going to expose a lot more of the fineness if I do end up slicing it because it's going to create a more dramatic effect. So it's just important to understand as you're working with this technique that even though we've done it in this placement, it doesn't mean you can't use it in other areas of the head or in other ways. I do find using diagonal sections really does work the best for your blend because it eliminates the need for a root shadow. It makes it so that the blend is already there, which is nice because then if you have someone who just wants to keep it really super bright, they're going to get that and they're going to have a lot of nice peaks and valleys. So you guys can see as we're done, we have this nice little veil section. All of our stuff meets up like Tetris, and we've been able to do an entire head in probably less than 20 foils. So I think this is pretty amazing, and I can't wait for you guys to see the finished result. So I've already processed this half of the head and I've done my little bit of root shadow and color with this. And you guys can see the really nice thing about this is there's that beautiful bit of lightness around the face. I've also cut her hair a little bit because I feel like, you know, as a mannequin, it's going to look awesome with that. And you'll be able to see this really amazing dimension of this really beautiful rich red with these beautiful rose gold highlights poking through the ends. This is kind of my favorite part because it gives her something that's a little bit more conventional, a little bit more funky and fun, but this could also be used for more of a classic highlight technique. So if she wanted something where she just wanted some blonde with mixed in with her brunette, you could still use the same technique and create a really nice effect. But I love this rose gold. This was created using Color Touch and using relights. So what I did was I actually mixed relights stroke 8.6, and I mixed that 1 to 10 with stroke 5.6 and then double 1.9. And that was applied through the ends. Her root shadow formula was 4 parts of 10 stroke 6 to 1 part of 4.4 stroke 6.5 with double 4%. And everything was processed according to manufacturer's instructions. So for a minimum of 15 minutes. The cool thing about this is she got this beautiful red shade. And you guys can see, to be honest with you, the great thing about this is when this washes out, she's going to be able to do whatever color she wants. So if she wanted to do this for the summer and then for the fall wanted to change her color, it's going to be an awesome color for her. Because we used Demi, this was going to be something that was really healthy for her hair, and it's given us a really gorgeous shine and a really nice effect. So I hope you guys like the effect. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this learning opportunity. It's been my pleasure to be here with you. And I hope if you guys get an opportunity as well that you'll check out mywellnessstore.com. And thank you guys for having me.